I am a squash master. So good at squash. You should look out. I will squash you on the squash court like a squash bug. That's all. Bye.
Hey, Steven, I am the greatest squash player ever to play squash.
I mean, you're the greatest player at the game called life, right?
Yeah, so when I went and photographed that squash, those pro squash players, and the kid's name is Lovejoy, and one guy is Lovejoy, they asked me to hit the ball with them, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. So I just joined a new gym. Not that I need to go to another gym because I have a gym in my basement, but my reasoning for going to this gym, it's called something of Philadelphia. It's at the Bellevue. I forget what they call it, but it's one of these. It's a bougie fucking gym, but
Best of the best, right?
Well,
Wait, how much is this gym?
Guess.
$50 a month.
No.
No?
I will just tell you this, that City Fitness, the gym down the street in Fishtown, will cost you $85 a month.
Oh my God.
And that's in the city. That's just that's how much they charge in the city. Or you could go to Purple Fitness around the corner and spend $10.
I was going to say, the gyms around here are like $10-15 a month.
I'll be honest with you, those $10 to $15 a month gyms are really good.
Yeah.
If you just need a place to go lift some shit up and put some shit down.
Yeah, they don't have, a pool or racquetball court, stuff like that, but it's good enough.
Let me explain to you it's called the Sporting Club of Philadelphia.
Ooh.
That's right. It's bougie. So let me tell you their amenities. It's 3 floors. They have a barber shop. They have a co-working space, so you can work there if you're not working out. They have a 4-lane, 25-meter pool, which I think is a half a size of a regular pool or something, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. The 4-lane. They have a cold plunge. Those are for seeing people's nipples. They have hot. Well, they called it a hot plunge. I call it a hot tub. They have a beautiful locker room. There's a steam sauna and a regular sauna. There's basketball courts that can also be pickleball courts. There's 2 squash courts. There's golf simulators. There's HIIT gyms. There's all types of fitness. Oh, and the big floor that has all the AstroTurf and all the weights. Like, it's really stocked full of great stuff.
And what does this cost?
What do you think it costs?
Now that you say all of that, and I know the context.
In Center City at the Bellevue.
$125.
$195 a month.
Jesus Christ.
It's not that bad.
Oh, you're so out of touch with reality.
My old personal trainer was like $80 a session. That's just for personal training. This gym, now think about this. If you work from home, you can use it as a co-working space. Co-working spaces are a couple of $100 a month just for places to work. They also have free coffee for people like you. Not that matters.
All of the stuff that you will not use.
No, but if I ever do want to just go and get out and just go hang out there and work, I could, which I won't. I know that it's not my space to work, but I could.
If you did.
No, but let's say I'm just pissed off here and I go there at 3:00 and I hammer out a script, and then at 5:00 I go play some fucking squash because I'm like a squash master now. Then that's a good use of like a really good use of the time. $195, to be honest with you, isn't that bad for, the fitness. What I liked when I walked in there, I'm like, that guy's hot. She's hot. He's hot. She's hot.
He's got a lot of money. She's got a lot of money.
The reason I did it is I also joined it as a social club to meet people in like-minded people.
Like-minded rich people.
They're not all rich. Some of them just only went to Harvard or Yale.
It's just funny because this is going back maybe 10 years, but when I was signed up for LA Fitness in New Jersey, it was $40 a month, which I thought was actually expensive back then. And it pretty much had most of those amenities. Pool, racquetball courts, squash courts, basketball, HIIT gyms, personal trainer gyms, all that stuff.
And how much was LA Fitness?
$40 a month.
Yeah, but that was 10 years ago. Inflation.
Yeah, but still not $200 a month. Even with inflation, $80.
Also, this is in the city, so this is a totally different place.
It's crazy how they get you just because it's the city.
It's a beautiful gym. It's just a beautiful. I went in and I was like, "Yep, I want to be here," and I have to make a commitment to go because I have to get on the L. Right, I have to get on the L. It takes me 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get there, but
that's a pain.
But I really want to do it. Like, I really need to be around other people. It's really important to my mental health to, like, I could spend a whole day by myself here, even though we'll do a podcast. It's just me by myself until 5:00. I know you get it.
I mean, that's most people. Just realize that. Like a lot of people that work
most
from
people
home.
go to jobs.
People that work from home are by themselves. I'm
Right.
here by myself for 10 hours a day editing.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's not like you're the only one doing that.
No, but I also don't have a kid. I don't have a wife, right? So I don't have a
see them during the
significant
day.
other. No, not during the day, but you see them at the end of the day. I have nobody at the end of the day. So it's like at 5 o'clock, I go home and it's just me. So it's like literally all day, every day, myself. Right? I'm not complaining. It is what it is. But I go out to this place and it's just, you just run into different people, and that's what I'm looking for. I did hit on a girl the other day, though.
I mean, hey,
Not at the gym.
If that's the price for your mental health, or just for your health in general, then it's
Cheaper
well
than
worth
going
it.
to a therapist. It's cheaper than going to the rapist.
That is true.
Good. You want to hear the story of this? I was at Vernick, one of my favorite places to eat. I was sitting at the bar. Now, it's a restaurant, so you don't really go there to drink, but they have really nice drinks for people that drink. I don't drink. I did have a drink with Mystery Man the other night. He ordered me an old fashioned with some Japanese whiskey in it, and I was very happy with it.
He didn't buy $400 bottles of wine for the table?
No, there were only 4 of us, so he's just got me a really good old fashioned, and I was like, fine, I'll have it. It was really tasty, really good, and I didn't chug it. But I'm at Vernick, and someone came in a little later before I was leaving. It was like 8:30, 8:45 to have dinner, and it was this woman, and she was by herself, and I couldn't see if she had rings or not. So I mentioned a few things. I talked anyway. Before I went, had a little conversation. She's in town from San Francisco, going to an event. She's like a cancer doctor of some sort, like leukemia, like blood cancer doctor.
Wow.
Was pretty cool.
Sounds
and then,
important.
yeah. So she said she liked the area and that's why she knew to go to Vernick. Anyway, I'm like, yeah, so what are you doing while you're here? Not hitting on her there, but asking. She's like, talk about restaurants. She's like, I'd love to go to this particular restaurant. And I was like, hold on one second. Pull out my phone, text the owner of that restaurant. And I'm like,
You're like,
he'll
hold
probably,
on. Do you know who I am?
yeah, he'll probably text me back shortly. But I've got to get going. Why don't you give me your number and I'll text you what he says. Right. And so he texted me back and I already left. I'm like, hey, good news. He said, contact him tomorrow. You're good to go. And I'm like, and I do want to ask this, and this doesn't change anything. You could go by yourself. Totally. Just enjoy. Are you married? Are you single? Are you dating? Are you other? I have to ask. And she's like, I'm single. Would you like to go with me?
Oh.
So I get all excited because we have dinner at the hardest place to get in the city because I so happen to know the owner. And he's all excited because he's like, cool, Jared, bring a girl. That'd be awesome.
Finally not bringing guys.
Yeah, finally. Next morning, I got a text. She canceled. And she apologized and said like she misjudged the amount of time she has, though I don't know. Maybe she just got cold feet.
She's sobered
I don't
up.
know. That is possible. She did have a drink.
I mean, maybe she was actually busy, though. Maybe she did actually miscalculate how much time she had. Who
Sure,
knows?
right. And it's still disappointing. She apologized that I jumped through hoops to make that thing happen.
Yeah.
And that was that. But I mean, she said, yeah, I had to ask, right? I had to ask. Anyway, enough of my stories. Let's get into RAWtalk episode number 128, which potentially, I will just say that Steven will not be on next week if there is an episode.
If.
We found that during Thanksgiving and all the holidays, nobody listens. I mean, somebody listens, but we lose about 40% of listeners that week, and they don't come back and listen. So it's like really not fully worth it to do.
I mean, the main thing is you leave for Africa the day, the 30th? That Saturday? So we have a lot of filming to do next week. I want to try and cram in as many videos as we can before you leave. So that is really the reason, but also, yeah, because the views are cut in half.
I leave on Thursday. I leave on Saturday the 30th.
Yeah.
So I'll be flying out then. But it's possible that next week, if I'm just sitting around here by myself, twiddling my thumbs, I might just record and talk about my preparations for Kenya, what I'm taking this year, and go into detail about that, and just give you guys a bonus of just me talking. That might be it. But the next official RAWtalk I mean, that will be RAWtalk, is from Kenya. I will be sitting there with Vanessa this year. Last year, I tried to do it with Steven, and we did, but there was like a huge delay. It still worked out. It was fun to have Steven on, and I was able to send back the 1 gig file. But this year, being that Vanessa Joy is going with us to Kenya, along with Manny, who's been banned from the podcast anyway. Manny, be like, hey, Manny, how's it going? Fine.
Hi.
Hey, you got anything to add to that? No. All right, great podcast, Mandy. Thank you. Thank you for joining the show. Well, Vanessa talks a lot, so I'm going to use the new Rode mic thing. I might even put on 2. I might put on the Hollyland and the Rode, so I would have to record into 2 phones. Funny thing is, I could record into her phone, and I could record into my phone.
It's going to be mono anyway, right? It's going to be one giant...
It's going to be one giant track. Well, it is going to be just like I did with David Burnett. It's going to be fine. We'll see how it works out. Ideally, I was talking to Tony Northrup the other day at the Sony event, which we'll get to in a minute, about the Rode mics, because he was super interested in them, but he realized that it doesn't have internal recording, and he really wants internal recording like his DJI ones have, even though the DJI ones are bigger.
Yeah, he's pretty big on that.
I would love to have internal recording on this thing too. It would just be awesome to have internal. You know, it'd be even more awesomer, Steven. A small box the size of one of those clip-on things that goes into my hot shoe that has a internal storage of like a terabyte or whatever and records EVF clips with full dirty out.
Oh, sure.
That would be good.
Do they make micro SD cards that are 1 terabyte?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're on those now.
Insane. Something that tiny.
That's what she said. Like, yes, totally.
I actually just looked it up, and it's only $80. SanDisk makes a 1 terabyte version. Lexar does too. Wow.
Yeah, but it's an Ultra, right? How slow is it?
It's the Extreme. Oh, it's UHS 1 as well. Yeah, it is a slow card.
That it wouldn't work for what we do.
They're all UHS 1. I wonder why.
Probably because they couldn't squeeze on the speed and the heat.
Yeah.
If it's too hot, it would probably melt. But Vanessa and I will be talking, hopefully from Kenya. I always say hopefully because it's a long way to go and you don't want to get eaten by bears or something that don't exist in Kenya. But we'll be going there. And I was just told by a little birdie that I will probably be doing a print giveaway when I get back, brought to you by Canon printer, the Pro 1100.
Oh.
Yeah. No, they called me today. They're like, do you want to do a print giveaway when you get back and promote the Pro 1100? I was like, yes, please. Let's do that. And so I'll be announcing giving away prints from my Kenya trip taken with the Canon R1 and R5 Mark II, probably. That's just a little secret on what the gear is going to be. It's not going to be R3s, even though I'm taking 2 R3s, by the way.
Oh my God, so much gear.
So much. Well, that's for Troy and Katie to use.
Yeah.
Troy and Katie, and I got them specific lenses to use, so they're not holding a 400-2.8, but I could talk about that next week when I get into it. So that's, I didn't talk about me being a master squash player. I realized I just got off base real quick. I am really enjoying playing squash. I played my first match, and I got wiped out by the dude because he's been playing a while, and I think I got 2 points. It goes to 11. He beat me, and then I lost my second match, and then I won 3 in a row. I beat this guy. I beat him 13-11 and because he won by 2, and then I beat this girl who was dating one of the squash players who's one of the best in the world. I beat her, and then I beat her again.
Cool.
Yeah. No, it was fun. It was like really good. I just bought squash shoes. They're coming in the mail today. I wore purple pants. I wore purple. I wore my purple shirt with no sleeves. I wore purple yoga pants with black shorts on top and my tennis shoes. Now I got squash shoes, and hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully everything's good. It's fun. Really good workout.
Now you're going to be obsessed with squash for about a month and then forget about it forever.
About a month, probably. Maybe 2 months. Maybe 2 months. Real quick, Black Friday's coming up.
Yes.
Breaking news exclusive for podcast listeners only. We're giving you the access to the Black Friday sale before everybody else. So it's active right meow for $10 off, which is the largest discount we ever give on the Grand Slam bundle. As you know, we rarely give discounts on our presets beyond what we do when we have them on sale. Which is all the which is till the next generation comes out, the next version.
We never discount them, but they're always on sale.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
I know.
This goes beyond that. last year we did $10 off of the Grand Slam bundle. We like to give a little bit of an incentive, but we do not like to devalue our products, which is a good education for people who are in business. If you devalue your product, and you see this all the time when you get messages and nonstop emails from all these companies that you sign up for, and like 5 emails a day you get on different deals. Oh, you missed the deal. Tomorrow the new deal starts, and it's the same. It's like bullshit. So we only do it sparingly. Black Friday sale. It's going to run for a week from Black Friday to the Friday after, and you can use code RAWtalk24 all together, lowercase RAWTALK number 24, to get $10 off the Grand Slam bundle if you don't already have that now. And I'll most likely be launching the Super Huger Mega Camera Giveaway 2025 in the next week or two for all of you guys to go to. I don't have the bit.ly link for that. Do not go to bit.ly/ Megafro 2023, 24, or 25. Somebody do it if you want. Do it if you want.
Make sure you're by yourself.
And don't have your speakers on. Because I'm probably, with that Super Huger Mega Camera Giveaway, gonna do bonus. Remember, every year we give bonuses to the winner if they have any of the Fro Packs. Well, if you have pre-ordered the book at bit.ly/FroBook2 and you are selected, or you own the book because it will be out by then when the contest ends, you will score an even bigger bonus if you are the random winner.
Very nice.
Very nice. Okay, moving into the actual show part here. We're going to talk about the boat. We're going to talk about my Sony trip. We're going to talk about the Sony A1, and that's going to take us to the end of this because there's a lot to talk about with the Sony A1. First things...
A1 II.
A1 II. Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Boat follow-up. Remember last week when I was going to go on a boat and I was paying $125? Did you know that I walked on the boat without showing my ticket, Stephen?
Really?
Well, yeah, I went on when the newscasters
They
went
just
on.
thought you were media? That's
Well,
funny.
yeah, because I look like me. I got this big bag I'm
Sure.
rolling on.
Yeah.
I got I got my think tank belt pack on. It just makes me look cool.
Did they eventually check or no?
No, they didn't.
Oh, wow.
So what my point of going on this, as I said, was to hopefully meet the right people, because the boat, to get the access that I need to the boat. I set up my 4x5. I carry it. Of course, somebody comes over, asks what I'm doing, who I am. Actually, I talked to their PR person who was like, I got your emails. I'm like, well, thank you for actually replying to them, which he didn't. I was like, I didn't know. But he's like, yes, we're working on trying to do what you requested. And my thing to them was, you know what? I'd like to donate all of the photos that I capture with the 4x5 to the museum that you guys are starting. You're a nonprofit, so I could probably get a tax deduction if I wanted. But me offering to donate it to them, and they don't have to do anything, it means I don't have to get paid by them. I can just all I want is the access, and I will give them the prints, or I'll give them the files. That was my in. So I talked to somebody. He's like, this is great. I'm going to connect you with so-and-so. We're going to try and make this happen. So anyway, on the boat, I did take pictures of the SS United States, but our boat never stopped. So the composition I had to guess.
I'm surprised they didn't dock at some point or anchor right near the boat. Yeah, it's
just stop.
They
kept doing circles.
Point is to get close to the boat and have a photo opportunity for the most part.
The good news is they did back the boat up next to it down the slip, so I was able to get 3 or 4 shots that were just filled with just the steel of the boat when we were close to it. And the shots are basic, bitch. I posted them on Instagram. They're all right.
I will say, you showed me the shots that day, and immediately I was kind of taken back in time. These looked like photos from that era just because that dock in general, that pier, just feels antiquated. It's like a time capsule. It takes you back to the 50s. Yeah. That's how old it looks. There was no new cars. There was nothing saying this is 2024. The only thing that I saw and noticed, there was like a Lowe's in the way background. You can see the sign. But besides that, I mean, it was a gloomy day, which I think worked out in your favor because it was a very muted image, which reminded me of an old school 4x5 black and white photo from the 50s. So I thought they were really cool images, but I do think the shots to get are on the pier up close and personal. However, having said that, including all of those photos in the overall photo story will really round it out. So I'm glad you did get on the boat and take some of those shots because you won't be able to get that view from the pier.
Yes. I Well, they're all right. The front is going to be best. So I've been in touch with the right people. That was the whole point of putting myself out into the right situation to make contact, to just be there. You have to be there. You can't just do everything through email and phone calls. You got to put yourself out there and be seen. And I know that being seen with a 4x5 camera is instant opening doors for people to talk.
I also think a lot of people have a harder time saying no in person versus via email.
But they also see that you're real,
Of course.
There's a difference. I also, on the boat, got a bunch of followers came up to talk to me, and they had their cameras.
Oh, really?
And they were, talking about how I helped them, and this is great. So even on that boat, there were people coming up. So I've been in touch with the right people, and they just told me that before the boat leaves a few days, they're going to hopefully get me out onto the pier to do it, but there's no saying on when. And when I Googled SS United States to see when that's going to be, there's another wrinkle in the story. A concrete magnate is trying to save the boat and move it to New York area, like Red Hook or something, to turn it into co-working space and maybe offices and maybe residences. I don't know if that will happen, but that's better than scuttling it at sea and turning it into a reef. So that's the latest wrinkle in that thing. I don't care what happens. I just want to get out there to photograph it as it sits today. So that's part of a photo story that if it does... Oh, you know what? If they turn it into an artificial reef, could you imagine? You couldn't take a 4x5 underwater to do it. Imagine a housing to do it.
You probably could, but the housing would be in like a little submarine.
It would be insane, and you would need to get one of those old backs. Back in the day with the 4x5, there was a back that allowed you to pull the slide, and it had like a spring, and it would move one forward and one would go back and be saved and put one forward.
Wow.
It's how the person shot the Hindenburg and was able to get 3 shots off really quick of the Hindenburg disaster is because they had one of those backs, a gray flax back or whatever, so they could bang out a bunch of news photos quickly. So that's the boat update, and I'll keep you posted. It's just about getting access.
I just hope they don't call you next week, just because we're going to be pretty swamped with filming, and that will probably take a good chunk of your day if that's the case. Or maybe if it's Black Friday, that would be ideal, or this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. And I go away on the 30th, they know. But if someone's now interested in the boat, maybe it's still here when I get back on the 11th or 12th.
I don't think it's moving before you get back.
I don't think it's moving this year.
Yeah, I agree.
I think being that they canceled it, it comes up on the holidays. It's probably overtime. It becomes more expensive. Even though it was supposed to leave last Friday and take 2 weeks, I guess there was going to be a little bit of Thanksgiving overtime, but not a lot. So now we're coming into the holidays. We'll see what will happen. I'll keep you guys posted. Speaking of shooting things, I was able to shoot the Jets game, and by shoot the Jets game, I got 1/4 of the Jets game because Sony brought 16 creators to the Jets game. Jets suck, by the way, at Meadowlands. And
Go Birds.
Each of us, they could take 4 photographers down onto the field per quarter to photograph with the new A1.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to be able to shoot the whole game. I didn't realize it was limited.
Yes, but when I got there, they told me what quarter I had. I had no say. I couldn't be like, hey, I'm better than these people. Why don't you give me more time? We went out after halftime for the third quarter. It was fine. I had a good time being out there. It wasn't as busy on the field as it is for college. There were so fewer people out there that it was great. Because what happened is during the pandemic, the NFL used that as an opportunity to limit how many people can be on the sidelines.
To clean house.
And so they went from 50 to 25 photographers.
I was hoping to go to that, but Sony said that we weren't going to be able to film anything on the sideline, so it was kind of pointless for me to go. But then I found out after the fact that you could still film. I could have filmed you. I just couldn't have filmed the actual game, which would have been nice to do. But I was busy anyway with trying to finish this A12 video. So
yeah, you had to get it done. I had fun on the field. I got to shoot with Manny. Manny and I were teamed up with Cooper, one of the NFL photographers. So I said, he's like, do you want to just like hang out in an area, or do you want to do it like an NFL photographer would? I'm like, I want to do it like an NFL photographer would. So you tell us where to go. You run when we need to run. I will run and follow you. This is what you do. I want to do exactly what you would do.
Yep,
I want to see
him.
where you're going. I want to shoot, not how you're shooting, but I want to be put in the positions that you think are the right positions. And so I got some good results. Manny got some good results. I did notice, like, looking at the other people that did shoot, they have real bad composition issues with cutting legs off. It's just, they leave way too much headroom.
Weren't you stuck with 400s, which is like a little
You could
tight?
use whatever you wanted.
Oh, okay.
I chose a 400. Manny chose a 300. Gerald Undone used a 200 to 600, which I personally wouldn't recommend using because that's going to look like an amateur shot. But what I will tell you with the A1 is when I photographed Rogers at the line from far away, and you go in and you just press that AF on button to zoom in when you're reviewing it, and it pops right to the face. You're like, holy shit, that's sharp. It's just so sharp with those 50 megapixels.
And these are the JPEGs, right? You cannot open the RAW files just yet?
That's correct. Even looking at the JPEGs, they're gorgeous. Just sharp, just because.
I mean, I would think the JPEGs are sharper anyway with the built-in sharpening in camera, but
I just mean, like, focus-wise, when you zoom in 200%, there's a big difference when you take an R1 file and zoom in to 24 megapixels and 50. Yeah. But then at the end of the day, you realize this is why I switched to 24 over 50 was no one's going to know. You're never zooming in 200%. Even 100% is the size of a wall. So it was a good event that they did. Only Sony could pull stuff off like that because they have a deal. They have a deal with the NFL, so they got us approval.
It was like Nikon taking us to Disney World for the Z6. They have access to Disney because they are the official sponsor of Disney, which I'm curious if they switched at this point to mirrorless cameras, because when I went just this year in March, they were still shooting with like D5600s.
No way, Steven. They still take really terrible photos.
Now, back to the game. I do think it's interesting that Sony will take you to a live public event like that, a major event where people are seeing the sidelines on national TV and letting you shoot with an embargoed camera that is still unreleased, where, Nikon and Canon would never do that. They're going to take us to somewhere that's indoors, that's private. And Sony's just like, what? What was that?
Olympus would take you to a private event that gets a public event
and leak their own camera by accident.
Yeah, get a picture of me holding it and then yell at me for being seen holding a camera at a public event that they took us to.
But Sony, I mean, they gave us that camera 4, 5, 6 weeks in advance.
Well,
we had a long time with the A1 too.
We had we had like 3 weeks before we had to send it back, which is crazy. And they don't send it to you and be like, don't be seen with it.
You didn't send it back, though.
No, I never sent it back. I kept it.
So you had more like 6 weeks.
I just kept shooting with it. I was just like, guys, I'm making content. I'm not sending it back. And the 28 to 70 f2, we'll talk about both of those in just a second. But no, Sony does a great job with their events. They have so much more money to spend than Canon and Nikon that they do. They bring in hundreds of people to their Sony Space or Sony Creative Space event, which is what was going on. And the only reason I went up is it was a good opportunity to, go into the club suite and actually get on the field and shoot.
And Canon just had that R1 event too, right? In Vegas or something like that. I saw people were there.
Canon in Hot Springs. It was like in the desert somewhere in California.
Oh, California.
I told them absolutely not. I was like, I've had your camera for a month and a half. I'm not coming out to an event to shoot dune buggies and surfers. I think those are two of the worst shooting events you could ever do. That doesn't showcase how good a camera is to photograph dune buggies with lock-on tracking. Like that, cool, great, awesome, like amazing, dune buggies, awesome, great.
And again, the cool thing that Sony did is they put you in a real professional environment where it's not easy to shoot a game like that, and they just let you do whatever you wanted. They're like, what? We're not going to make it picture perfect. We're going to make it real. We're that confident that the focus system is that good that we don't even care. We're going to let you do whatever.
That's what Sony always does. And Sony is the company that started this during the pandemic, where they would send us the product. The pandemic changed how they do their launches because they realized that they don't need to do a trip anymore. If they just send us all the cameras beforehand, it's probably more economical and they can get more out to people, which gets them more impressions, which is what they care about.
Well, and now we know that when there is a Sony trip, that means it's a very, very big deal. Like the A9 III, like the A1 II.
Did we have an A9 III trip?
Technically, it was in New York. I mean, we just took the train up, so it wasn't really a full press trip for us.
Oh,
But
right.
yeah, it was a press trip.
Oh, that's right. Well, that was different because we didn't have hands-on beforehand. We had to stand there and make the content.
But that's what I mean. When we are invited to a Sony event now, we know it's a big deal.
Yeah.
If we don't get briefed beforehand, if we don't get sent the camera beforehand, whatever.
So by now, you know that Sony announced their A1 II and their 28-70 f2. I'm going to turn the floor and microphone over to Steven to talk about the specs of the A1 II, which we do have a hands-on real-world preview of, which you could check out over on the YouTubes.
Well, first of all, it's nice to finally come clean because we have had this camera for quite some time, and it's not easy to
Lie to people?
lie on this podcast and pretend that we don't know anything.
We don't know what's going on.
Oh, well, the rumors are saying this, but, we know it's not right. Whatever.
We know that Sony Alpha Rumors just doesn't get shit right.
I will say, though, I'm thankful that as of now, at least I really do know nothing else. As of now, we are finally caught up on getting all the new gear stuff out. We had the Z52. Except that one thing. No, but we had the Z52, obviously the A1 II, the 28-70 from Sony, the Canon 70-200, the R1 just came in. We were just finishing that Kickstarter project when all of this came through. So it was a crazy month or two for us trying to get all this stuff done on top of, running our normal YouTube channel.
Yep.
But in terms of the A1 II, I think a lot of people are disappointed. A lot of people calling it, simply an A1 with a firmware update, stuff like that.
And they're fucking wrong, Steven.
I will say it's certainly an incremental update for sure. It's not a revolutionary update like we saw in the A9 III. This basically combines the A9 III and the A1 into one body, minus obviously the global shutter and the high frame rate, but it is essentially the A9 III body.
You know how they told us it's the same exact body as the A9 III? It's not.
Slightly different.
Yeah, well, it'd be very helpful if they, made us aware of those differences on a call instead of me discovering it when I'm there. Like, oh yeah, we moved these ports around a little bit.
Yeah, but I think it's just the ports that were not in the exact same spot.
Yes, the ports were changed.
Yeah, but the actual body itself, buttons and everything, like the grip still works from the A9 III on the A1 II body. So essentially it's the same body minus the port layout. Now, since it is the same body, it has that 3.2-inch 4-axis 2 million dot screen, which we love. It started with the A7R5. Now it's in the A9 III and the A1 II. Best of both worlds. You got tilting, you got vari-angle, you got everything. This should be the standard moving forward with every single camera company. It also comes with the Speed Boost C5 button that we saw with the A9 III. EVF, basically the same exact EVF, except this time around, you can jump up to 120 frames per second refresh rate and still stay at that 9 million dot resolution, where before it dropped down to about 5 million dots when you went to that 120 frames per second refresh rate. Also comes with that new viewfinder that you call it a pillow to your eyeball.
Not new viewfinder, new eye cup piece.
The viewfinder eye cup is now a very soft little pillow, and opposed to that hard rubber that every other camera comes with. And this one you can really kind of dig your eye in even more, which is really nice. And same menu, same tile layout, all that of the A9 III. So now inside the body, not much has changed. Same 50.1 megapixel stacked BSI sensor. That being said, they always do this for the most part when there's a second generation body. They did this with the A9 I to the A9 II. They did it in the A7R2 and 3 with that 42 megapixel sensor. They did it with the A7S line. And then they also did it with the R4 and 5. And I'm sure there were other cameras too that I can't think of right now, but this is kind of par for the course with Sony. It has the new AI processor taken from that R5 and the A9 III. Same 30 frames per second electronic shutter. This, I was hoping to see some kind of bump in frame rate. You still get the compressed RAW at 30 frames per second. You can only get uncompressed or lossless compressed at 20 frames per second. So that hasn't changed at all. Same CF Express 2.0 card slots. CF Express A, we were hoping for 4.0, like the rumor websites. Your favorite website called out. Same dedicated subject recognition modes. You got the human, animals, birds, insects, cars, trains, air, whatever. But you do have a new auto mode now, which is a first for a Sony camera. Nikon and Canon, they have this as well, but this is the first time that Sony is implementing it. However, they did say it's going to be slower at subject recognition than a dedicated mode. So if you know you're shooting just birds, put into Bird AF. And the other big thing, you can now use those subject recognition modes in video, where before you only had human AF detection in video mode on the A1. Pre-capture, biggest thing for you. It now does up to 1 second beforehand. And it now has the speed boost mode from the A9 III for up to 30 frames per second. So it's
not even a speed boost mode. It's stupid that they called that a speed boost mode.
Basically pointless. However, that being said, it is nice to be able to shoot, hey, I want to always shoot uncompressed or lossless compressed RAW at 20 frames per second. But if I do really need that extra boost, I can set the speed boost to 30, so I can go from 20 to 30 with one press of a button. But I feel like people buying this camera are probably staying locked in at 30 frames per second because they're shooting birds or animals or sports or whatever it may be. Updated IBIS, now 8.5 stops. They have all the new ZVE1 stuff like the auto framing, framing stabilizer, dynamic active mode. A9 III did not have that, so this is actually an upgrade from the A9 III, but it's really the only upgrade from the A9 III. Video specs, basically the same, 8K up to 30p, 422 10-bit, which I actually thought was an update at first, since the A1 originally shipped only doing 420, but they did a firmware update, so they made it 422, and this one has the same exact specs. Everything else is the same. 4K 60, Super 35, 1080 240, 4K 120. They have no oversample modes, though, from 8K to 4K, like the R5 or the Z8. I was really hoping there was going to be a new mode like that. Finally, like a full width 4K mode that is oversampled from 8K, but that's not the case here, just like the A1. So if you're shooting video and you have the A1, nothing really changed at all. And last thing, the price, it's $6,500, which people were hoping it would come in a little less, being that the A9 III is out now, but it's still the exact same price that the A1, which if you think about it with inflation, it is kind of less than the A1 came out at, but still very expensive compared to what's on the market today, like the Z8, like the R5 Mark II, which are not flagships, yet they outcompete this camera spec for spec.
The Nikon absolutely not competing with this, in my total opinion.
There's a lot of specs that the Nikon does better with.
Sure. In actual shooting, if it comes to action,
you're talking about autofocus specifically.
Yes. Well, if it comes to landscapes, sure. Anything, Nikon is going to be very good there. But my thing is, you see these people being like, why didn't they just make a firmware update to the A1? And I commented back the same reason that Nikon's autofocus couldn't get better with just firmware, because it's hardware.
I think they were talking more about like the software based things like pre-capture, stuff like that they probably could do via a firmware update.
But maybe they couldn't have done pre-capture because it didn't have the extra processing power. Like, you don't know. And so for me, there were three things that the camera needed to do, and I've said this in a ton, that it needed three things. Better body, right? The A9 III body. It needed to have pre-capture, and it needed to have the AI processing for autofocus, because the A1's autofocus is the reason I switched to Canon. When the A1 didn't do what I wanted it to do, but the Canon R3 did do what I wanted it to do, that was my signal to make the switch, even though one's 24 and one's 50. The camera is fantastic. The A1 II is fantastic. 50 megapixels, 30 frames per second with pre-shooting, with really fantastic autofocus. And the files, even though I can't open the RAW files just yet, we know they're going to be very similar to the old one.
They're going to be exact.
The images are great. The focus, the tightness, when you zoom in 1-to-1 on the back of the camera, or you zoom in 100% and you're like, holy Jesus, it nailed it. I can read the wristband of Aaron Rodgers to see the plays. Like, that's insane. So it gives you all the ability to do that. And my biggest gripe was the pricing. I said that it's $2,200 less expensive for an R5 Mark II. Now, that's not to say that someone's going to jump ship to that from Sony, because if we look at it from a Sony standpoint, if you're an A1 user, the big question is this: are you shooting action? Did you buy an A9 III? If you didn't buy an A9 III, should you buy an A1 II if you like the A1? And the answer is, two full-time professionals sell your A1 for, which is going to drop to what they'd say, it's going to drop $1,000 to $5,500.
Correct. Now, it says it's a limited time sale, but I think moving
There's
forward,
no way.
They say it's going to remain in the lineup. I think it's going to always be $5,500. And buying that used, I mean, great camera for like $3,500.
Well, if you can get it for $3,500, I think you'll be able to sell it for $4,200. So if you sell used for around 42,
such a specific number.
Well, if you sell it directly, now if it's $5,500 new, I guarantee you maybe a store is going to give you $4,000 and try to squeeze a couple of dollars of profit out of it to maybe $4,500 used. But $4,500 used for an A1 is pretty incredible. But if you're a full-time pro, autofocus is a thing. Pre-shooting is a thing for shooting sports. Better body feel, absolutely buy this. I know that my buddy Matt Dirksen, who's going to Kenya with us and is the Cubs team photographer, did not buy A93s. He stuck with A1s, and he has to get 3 bodies. He was thinking about getting 3 A1s. I said, why don't you get an A93 and 2 A1-2s? Because that way you could have the A93 whenever you have to do anything with LED boards. You can have that, and then you can have the A1-2 and have the best of autofocus, and he loves it. He just wishes he had a bigger battery.
I think if I was shooting sports, I would probably stick with the A9 III at this point. I mean, the fact that you have the global shutter, the 120 frames per second, the speed boost button, the 14-bit RAW at the 120 frames per second frame rate, no flickering, like you said. You're going to have 0 banding, 0 distortion, 0 rolling shutter, all of that at an incredible frame rate. You're going to get that slight hit on dynamic range, which no one's going to see because you're going to be probably posting JPEGs anyway if you're a high-end sports shooter. But A9 III for me all day. Now, that being said, I think the A1 II is still an incredible camera. Do not get me wrong. I just think people are a little underwhelmed at the specs, waiting 4 years, hoping for a big update, especially after the A9 III came out, and kind of getting more of an incremental update.
Well, it's an incremental update. I mean, it was the most revolutionary camera ever made 4 years ago.
That's kind of the issue. That's the problem why people are so bummed out, because it made such a big splash when it's just like the A9 IV. When that comes out, I guarantee that's going to be an incremental update.
The people that are upset are still the people that don't own these cameras,
of course,
and they just want to complain about something. I look at it from and the pros that are going to be shooting for the AP and all the agencies that use that, like Doug Mills and Evan Vucci, they will gladly take an A1 II. Because it has a new faster Ethernet port for helping them transmit their files. They get the pre-shooting, even though some of them might not even use it, and they don't shoot. Evan told us he only shoots at like 8 frames a second anyway.
See, I don't know how much that faster Ethernet port will even help, because all the files are double the file size anyway from the A9 III. So it's almost the same speed in the end because the file sizes are double.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just know that a lot of those people will take the A1 for the 50 megapixels for how much cropping they do.
Sure.
The answer is simple. A9 III or A1. Do you crop or do you not crop?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want the 120 frames per second? Do you not want, do you want more than 30? Because you can get more than 30 with the A9 III. Are you okay with 24?
I mean, I still think 30 is...
it's incredible.
It's perfect for 99% of things that you shoot for the most part. But you will get a better hit rate with 120 frames per second, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you will get things that you otherwise would have missed. Which brings up, the R1, 40 frames a second, which is more than what the flagship competitor can do. But it's hard to put those flagships next to each other. It's more like I will put the R1 next to the A9 III and the R5 Mark II next to the A1 II. Those are really the comparisons, because flagship to flagship, it's not really a comparison.
I still consider, at least from a price point, the A9 III and the A1 II both flagships. And
one's
it's pick your poison.
Flagship.
One's more specific. Yeah, exactly. It's just more specified cameras, just like they used to do back in the day. And Canon, same thing, but you're getting a bargain for the $4,300 for an R5 II based on what that offers. And also, you got to realize that the R5 Mark II is also doing 30 frames per second uncompressed 14-bit RAW, where this is still dropping down to compressed RAW. So it does outcompete it, and video-wise, it really outcompetes it for $4,300.
Right. The readout speed of the sensor won't be as fast as the A1 II.
I mean, you're talking 4 versus 6 milliseconds.
And for most people, it's not even a
noticeable
thing. The A1 II body feels better than an R5 body. The R5 body versus the R3 body and the R1 body. Yeah, I mean, it's for me, coming from a pro body all the time, the buttons don't feel as good, feels more plasticky, feels more slippery.
I think the body feel is subjective. I personally prefer the R5 Mark II over the A1 II. I think the Sony bodies are more that slippery rubber, and
not anymore.
I prefer
the A9 III.
I disagree.
Change that. No, you're wrong. You have wet hands.
Exactly, and it slips, and the R5 Mark II doesn't. So it's still slippery.
All right. Slippery when wet.
Now, will the A1 be getting a firmware update? I know they really lacked on that during the entire release cycle for the A1, but now with these new features, will they trickle down a little bit to the A1? I'd probably not, but we'll see. What will the A1 III bring? That's what I'm really curious about. We're going to wait another 4 years for that.
Yeah. 4 years.
What is that going to be, a 50 megapixel global shutter?
Maybe.
Which would be bonkers.
Maybe they do a 33 megapixel global shutter.
I still think that 30-ish range is perfect. But then you kind of get screwed on video. So
Right. So they probably take that into consideration. I look at the A1 II as a stills camera well before it's a video camera.
it actually overheated on us during our preview. I shot in 8K 24p because that's the only way to get full width oversampled video from 8.6K, I think, to 8K. Not that big of a deal, but I wanted to have a nice, clean, full frame image. And I just assumed it wasn't going to overheat. We set the overheating mode to high, the temperature setting. The room was, 67 degrees when we were filming?
Yep.
It was cold. It was a cold day out, and we turned the HVAC off when we film. And it overheated after 22 minutes, and I was very surprised because meanwhile, we had the original R5 shooting also in 8K 24, C-Log 3, 10-bit 422, right behind it, and that kept going and going and going, and I could probably get 45 minutes to an hour before that thing overheats these days after that initial firmware update that fixed all of the overheating. So that's just the irony, is like people are always like, the R5 overheats, it's terrible. It doesn't anymore. Like I said, I just shot 8K 24 for at least 30 minutes during that preview without stopping, and it was fine. Meanwhile, the A1 II overheated in 22 minutes in a cold environment.
I just think that, like I say in my photo news fix that's out, the people that know, like they know the difference between going from when a pro uses a pro camera, it's just like they know. And a lot of times with pros, it doesn't, like, they're out there to just shoot. They don't really know most of the specs of cameras. They know this is what they need to do. This is what the camera can offer them. They go and they do it. And they don't sit here and worry about every little subtle nuance that a lot of amateurs do, because I get it. It's a big purchase, but just get out there and shoot. And if you have to think that hard and you're not making a shit ton of money at it and you don't drive Porsches, then,
It's just a shame that the original A1 came out right before all of the big updates started to happen with Sony, like the new screen, the new AI processor, all that stuff. Because if that came out a year or two later, that would have been the A1 too, essentially, but it would have been the A1. And that would have just made an insane splash. But then it's like, what would they have done with the
in the
A1
meantime
at that point?
Well, what would they have done in the meantime? So I think they did great. I'm not super harsh on this camera. The only thing, that one mistake I feel, is the price. If they made it even $6,000 or $5,800, $5,700, and they acknowledge it. But what I was told is that they don't want to upset original A1 users by devaluing the camera so far that it makes them feel like shit.
That's a good point. However, I am shocked that they didn't try and match the competition, like Canon 6299. Usually Sony will do that. Just like the Sony 28-70 f2, they made it $100 less than the competition, Canon's 28-70 f2. I thought they were going to come in close to that $6,200 price range to match the R1. I mean, the Z9, what's that, at $5,000 now these days? $5,500? Let me see.
Are they in business?
The Z9 is $5,500.
That's what it came out at.
That's what it came out at, yeah.
It's hard to sell someone a Z9, dude. I love someone was like, oh, the Z9 has everything that the A1 II has. I was like, oh, does it? Can it shoot 30 frames per second RAW? Oh, that's right. No, it can't.
Well, the pre-capture as well, JPEG only. But then you look at the Z8, and it's the Z9, but much less expensive in a smaller body.
I still don't get that one to this day.
I think the Z8 is a great value.
Huge, great value. We didn't talk about the lens. You want to hit us with the basics of the lens?
Yeah, so it's first G Master with a constant f2 aperture. It's not a 24-70 like what was rumored. It's a 28-70. They're clearly going after Canon's 28-70 f2. It's much smaller. If you look at our preview video, or actually our review video, it's much smaller and lighter, and you can just see how much thinner it is than the Chody 28-70. It's a whole pound lighter.
It is.
Pretty insane. It's got a filter door in the lens hood. Canon's doesn't. It's 86 millimeter filter thread. Canon has a 95. I mean, a lot of spec for spec, it kind of beats out Canon's. It has an aperture ring with an iris lock and an on-off switch. Canon doesn't have that. Has a smoothness and a tension switch. Canon doesn't have that. It's got 2 custom function buttons. Canon doesn't have that. It's got 4 XD linear focus motors that can keep up now with the A9 III's 120 frames per second, also with video at 120p, 11 aperture blades where Canon has 9. You kind of get my drift. Like it's kind of out competing Canon little by little in each spec, and it's $28.99. So they came in as expected, about the same price. What I'm curious about is, will Sigma follow suit and come out with their own version for half the price? Because that's kind of what Sigma tends to do. I'm sure it'll be a few years though until that happens.
The 28 to 70 f2 is a fantastic range. You know it. I've been using it for years.
Do you think that is your reason for switching, or was it more a combination of autofocus?
It was a combination. It was autofocus and that lens. And the same thing, Matt Dirksen, the photographer for the Cubs, who's going to Kenya, says he rather, if he had to pick between an A1 II or getting the 28 to 70 from Sony to borrow, he would take the lens over the body, because the 28 to 70 allows him to not have to take a 28 millimeter, two different lenses, a 50 and a 20. So he would take a 20 fixed lens and a 20 and a 50. Now he can have the 28 to 70 all in one range.
It
replaces other lenses.
Like you said in the video, it's a prime zoom. It's multiple primes in one for the most part. And yeah, it's not a 1.4 or a 1.2, but it's close to a 1.8 at that point, and you're still going to get a lot of three-dimensional images at f2. This is a lens that I would pretty much always shoot wide open for the most part. And speaking of shooting wide open, I'd also think that Sony's is sharper edge to edge than Canon's, but keep in mind Canon's is 7 years older.
It's 6 years old.
So what's the Mark
I've never
II gonna
seen
bring?
issues. I've never seen, personally, I rarely ever miss with that 28 to 70, the Chode edition from Canon, but that lens is a beast. I would really love to see them update it. It was their basically fuck you lens when the EOS R came out.
Yep.
That's how old it is. I mean, it was like, look what we can do. We can make something so fucking cool that you've never seen before. And it was so cool that Nikon doesn't have anything like it, and Sony didn't have anything like it until today.
They announced that the same day as the 51 too, correct? Weren't they the two big lenses?
They were the two starting lenses for that system. And then not too long after that came the 24 to 70 and the 28 to 70. Sorry. And the 70 to 200, which we questioned since day one.
That was when the RP came out, I believe.
Yes,
that New Orleans
in February.
Trip. We couldn't even touch the lens because it was like a handmade prototype that would fall apart. Now, that being said, Canon having crazy lenses, is this the beginning of Sony starting to mimic that crazy lineup, like the 10 to 20 f4, the 100 to 300 2.8, 24 to 105 2.8, the 200 to 800, maybe finally an 85 1.2? I mean, is this the beginning?
No, like I don't see a 300, like a 100 to 300 coming, because they just put out a 300 2.8 that is really small.
I completely forgot about that.
They have a really nice 300 2.8, but
they do.
When I'm in Kenya and I have two choices, I have a 100 to 300 and a 400 2.8 on two bodies, I can do better than what the other people can do, because I looked back. I'm like, that's a 284 millimeters. That's a 260. That's a 212, right? Something better than what a 70 to 200 could do, but a 300 fixed doesn't have that between 200 and 300 like the 100 to 300, which was so ideal for shooting out there for certain situations when you could get close.
I don't understand why you don't just put a teleconverter on your 70 to 200.
Fuck you, Steven.
I know you love teleconverters, so. Now that we have a 28 to 70, by the way, I feel that the 24 to 70, I don't know who would buy that at this point. I mean, you're only looking at a couple $100 more and you can get a 28 to 70 f2. Yeah, you get the 4 extra millimeters on the wide end, which does make a difference. Don't get me wrong. But I find myself, when I'm shooting with a 24 to 70, more shooting at the longer end than the wider end. If I want wider, I'm usually using something like a 14 to 24, 12 to 24, 15 to 35, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about this with Matt, the Cubs photographer, again, like a 70, we talk about the 70 to 200 and the 24 to 70 as being just lenses now. Back in the day, 20 years ago, you're like, oh shit, that's going to separate me from everybody else who was using 20 millimeter prime 2.8s, and now it was a 24 to 70 2.8, and it was just better. But it's a very basic lens in terms of how it looks. It's utilitarian, as he put it. It's a lens that gets the job done, but a 28 to 70, an 85, 51, 85 1.2, like those types of lenses go beyond the look. Like they just look fantastic.
I like that utilitarian lens. That makes sense.
I will still preface this with, please don't mistake this gear talk, me talking about having the ability to have the best lenses ever, because we're in a different position, with what it was like 20 years ago when I was shooting and watching people come into Alan's camera when I worked there and dropping $8,000 on lenses and bodies and me going, holy shit, how do they do that? Because all I had was an old 24-70 and I had an old 20 millimeter 2.8, right? And I used it. And no one's going to look at your camera, your stuff and be like, you missed the winning shot because you used a 20, you didn't use the right lens, even though you got the shot. No one's going to sit there and be like, oh, it's not perfect because of X. It doesn't matter. Use better glass. 2.8 or better is the key. It does make a big difference. But even then, a 24-105, you could do portraits with that all day long and it's still going to look great.
Yeah.
I know there's not much to add there.
Well said. Yeah, I completely agree.
So any questions for me before I go to Kenya? Because if you're probably not on next week before I go away.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited.
You got all your shots? You got all your gear ready?
Shots.
Okay.
Got my shots. Got my malaria pills. Got my extra strength pink pill. Hopefully I don't need it this year.
Anyone else that our viewers would know going on this trip?
I'll hold the baseball player name until later. For now, there's another baseball player. This one is an active baseball player, which is a future Hall of Famer at their position, who's coming to the trip. So I'm just looking forward to hanging out with everybody again. That was the best part of the trip last time. I mean, it was only 5 of us. This time it's 12 people. So there's 3 vehicles and less people in each vehicle.
Wow.
And we'll probably hang around each other in the vehicles or just go off on different directions, but then meet up at certain points. And if someone gets to something cool, they'll radio ahead and all that to let the other groups know. But it's, I'm ready. I'm excited. You know, I get anxious about getting there. I always do. It's like, well, what if it's delayed? And what if there's an issue? And what if we miss the flight? Like shit like that. That's where my brain goes.
How early are you going to show up at the airport?
Well, we get to go into the British Airways lounge in Philly. I think, what's my flight? 6:30 in the afternoon?
I don't know.
I'll be there 3 hours plus early just
You'll
to
be
get
there 5 hours early.
I'll just be there to get checked in, get ready for the flight. I'll be wearing my compression pants that Junior got me last year again to keep your ankles. It gets hot in those pants though. I don't know how. I don't know. It keeps the compression that keeps your blood flow better for your legs. So,
man, what would you do without them?
I don't know.
Legs would probably fall off.
I'm going to wear the Sony pants. Remember those Sony pants that Sony sent us a couple years ago?
They're pretty sweet.
They are, and they have zipper pockets so stuff won't fall out. But I'll be wearing those pants. Oh, and I will be taking I just ordered a smaller Patagonia bag this year. Last year I took the 50 liter. I just ordered the 40 liter yesterday. I am seeing how little I could take. I took too many pieces of clothing. I'm taking 2 pairs of pants this year only, and I'll rotate them through, and I will take only 2 of those button-down shirts, 5 or 6 I Shoot Raw shirts, and then underwears and socks, and that's it.
I'm actually pretty sure your safari shirt is hanging with all the other t-shirts upstairs with your wardrobe, basically.
Yeah, one of them's right here downstairs, so I'm not sure why it's down here. Anyway, don't forget about the Black Friday sale, Fro Day sale, $10 off Grand Slam bundle when you use the code RAWtalk24. The Super Huge or Mega Camera giveaway is coming up again. I will be announcing that to help promote everything. People love the contest giveaway. You can enter for free, and you could also get bonus entries by purchasing presets, by purchasing the photo book, my book number 2, and
great
then
name.
when we announce the winner, it is a great name. You will get some random winner will win something. Who won this year? Oh yeah, that guy I called, right? And it was
a Zoom call, yeah.
Yeah, I had to make sure that I was like, he's like telling me he wants Canon and he wanted a 28-70 f2. I'm like, that's cool. I'm like, can you hold off 2 weeks? Because then I'll be able to tell you to get an R5 Mark II, and that's what he got.
Yeah.
Brandon at Allen's put one aside for him and then shipped it out when it came in, and I paid for it.
So he got a R5 Mark II and a 28-70 f2?
Well, he paid the difference.
Man, talk about a baller setup.
He paid the difference, right? Yeah. Anything over the $5,000 because he did own the presets.
Do you recall what he came from? What camera?
He didn't own any cameras. He was using an R5. He was using an R5C at work. Okay. So he had R5C at work and knew that he wanted to do the Canon stuff, but didn't have his own gear yet.
And the R5 Mark II is essentially the R5C, but better video wise. That's cool.
Yes. So he ended up with that.
Very cool.
So that's it, guys. We're going to end it right here. If I do one next week, when I get bored, it will just be me, bonus episode, RAWtalk talking, and then in Kenya, me and Vanessa sitting down. Hopefully she doesn't yell at me too much in person, but I'll be able to slap her from across the way, which I wouldn't do ever, obviously, but she could slap me.
Yep. I
might like it.
Oh.
Let's leave it at that. All right. Thank you guys very much for listening. Jared Polin, FronosPhoto.com. See ya.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving if I'm not on.
Turkey sucks.